Hi, this is Stephen, and this is Astro Indicator Update, Excursions into Practical Astrology, and this is episode 31. And today's date is Sunday, March 15th. So my last update, my last video was just about a week ago, and so I'm doing this one a little bit more quickly than I normally do because of what's gone on in the markets this past week. So let's see what let's get into this, and we'll talk about some things that I think are important to know, that are relevant. Initially, we'll look at the U.S. astrology chart and the transits that are happening. I mean, I've talked about this for a while, and if you go back to my December videos, I could see this was something big was going to happen with the Pluto transit that that was approaching at that time, and that we are in the middle of. And in December, I said, it could be a real crisis, sort of at least it was going to be experienced as sort of a life and death situation that would also affect our business and so forth. So you can go back and listen to those videos. It was a December video, I'm fairly certain. But we'll look at the updated astrology chart for the U.S. We'll go through several key markets that I think are important, and touch upon what's going on with the dollar, the U.S. dollar, and the gold, silver approaching supply strains. So here we are. This is the USA transit update. And if you've been listening to my videos, you kind of know how this is laid out. This is the chart of the USA in the middle, right here. And I have this chart transits for the end of this month. It's what I have to say today. What I have to say about this March 31st chart sort of applies today, but it's becoming exact. Certain transits are becoming exact at the end of this month. So what am I talking about here? If you haven't been listening, what we have here is, let me draw a little chart here. What we have here is the transit of Pluto right here is directly opposite the USA natal Mercury. Okay, very rare. In fact, it has never happened in the history of our country. And this is dealing with, it has a number of levels to it. Obviously, I mean, Mercury actually has some symbolism related to health, but it's mostly related to the media and business transactions, transportation, travel, things of that nature. That's Mercury's primary meanings and symbolism. It has a secondary relationship to health as well. But I see this, I see that we are in the midst of a collective sort of crisis that the media is very much involved in, whether it's the social media or mainstream media, okay? Pluto deals with crisis. On the individual level, when people have a Pluto transit, they often feel like, it's life or death situation, something, a great deal of pressure. They just have to respond in a certain way, and they have to kind of let go of something just to maintain some emotional balance in their life. So anyway, this is what's going on. It's going to continue through most of this year. It will diminish next year. Now, the reason why I'm bringing all this up again, and I talked about this last week, and my main point last week was that I felt that was sort of to illustrate through astrology that this was going to probably continue into the fall, at least on the economic level. That's my opinion. But what's also going on in the astrology that I'm emphasizing today and let's see if I can draw it down here, is at the end of this month, we have several elements in astrology all converging at 24 degrees Capricorn. We have Jupiter, Pallas Athena, and Pluto all opposite this Mercury. So a couple things could happen in my mind. Now, normally Jupiter has a beneficial effect on a time period, on a situation, etc. Maybe about 10 or 20% of the time, it can just expand and actually make the situation worse by amplifying the conditions in some fashion. Okay, but that is, the odds of that are somewhat low. Okay, and I'm somewhat of an optimist here. My feeling is, we could have sort of a peak in this panic, in a way, at the end of this month. However, I think that the mitigating influence of Jupiter coming up and catching up to Pluto here will start to be evident, as this transit continues through the next couple months and into the summer. I think that my hopeful guess here, because of my experience with Jupiter, is that things should start looking better on the health scene here, maybe in about a month. Okay, after this period, this may be the peak right here. Is basically what I'm saying. And so we'll just have to see how it plays out. But I wanted to point that out to you. And because that weekend, what is this, Tuesday? So it would probably be, let me double check here. Yeah, it'd probably be sort of that weekend, March 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st. That could be sort of a peak, with things in some fashion. And I may be being excessively optimistic, but just let's see how this plays out. Okay, so this was the chart for March 31st. Let's move ahead a month and just see another date that I think is approaching that is important. And let me get into that. So again, we see that we have, Jupiter and Pluto, and Pallas Athena fairly close together. Jupiter's crossed over Pluto here. It's actually past this opposition. Pallas Athena is now past, okay? But what's interesting to me about this time period, again, April 26th, which is a Sunday, is that right then we have, in transit, in the sky, we have Sun-Uranus conjunction. And not only that, it is sort of making an aspect to the ascendant of the U.S. chart, 7 degrees, 6 degrees, okay? And it is, this particular aspect is 150 degrees. It's called an in conjunction. I still think that they're as important, equally important with oppositions and trines and so forth. This generally indicates that we may, this is it right here, we may get something coming out of the blue, within a day or two of this date, okay? Something, could come up that's a little bit shocking. And so this is a little bit of a warning period, a warning note to put on your calendar that time period, give or take a few days, is I am a little concerned about. So let's see if things subside a little bit after the first of the month. But right about this time, this is the other point I wanted to make here that I think is this time period is important, is that Pluto goes retrograde on this date And, from the Earth standpoint, planets look like they kind of go backwards. And when they're stationary in reverse course or start going forward, they're particularly strong. So even though I'm trying to express some hope in this video with what I see in the astrological symbols, there are some dates coming up where we should mark our calendar and see if if something extraordinary happens, and a little forewarning is sometimes helpful for all of us. So anyway, April 26th, mark that on your calendar. Okay, this was a brutal week. Let me get rid of my lines. This was the Tao. I'm just going to try to go this fairly quickly. We have a number of key astrological days coming up, which are the vertical lines. The other lines are just traditional support and resistance areas that you use in technical analysis. We're extremely oversold. We had a big bounce on Friday. This was Friday the 13th, right there where you see. Now coming up, a pretty significant date is happening this Thursday, around Thursday, Friday. And this is usually a reversal time period. So I can imagine us bouncing for up and down for a few days until we get to Wednesday and we find out what the Federal Reserve is going to do. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if we do not continue going higher Monday, Tuesday, and half of Wednesday, and we trade sideways. And what I see on Thursday and Friday look to me like reversal energy dates. Traditionally, from my research, that's all I'm sharing with you here. This is not investment advice. I'm sharing with you my research. From my research, normally these are reversal days. Who knows how long they'll last, but I think we could get a reversal. In addition, we have a fairly out here, this date right here, March 31st, which was sort of around, the astrology in the U.S. that I just went over with you. This oftentimes is a bullish astrological energy, this March 31st date. So, mark that in your calendar. I mean, things look bad. No, there's no doubt about it with the coronavirus and its effect on people and its effect on business and so forth. But we're so oversold, the Federal Reserve could just throw a ton of money at the situation and we could get a bounce here. Gold. Well, gold, who knows what gold's going to do, but it's holding up a little bit better than the Dow is. It's not true for gold mining, let me tell you, but let's see what we have. So again, we have a March 20 date coming up. So something's happening in the markets on Thursday and Friday, and it shows up in the gold astrology as well. Mostly on Friday, okay? So we'll see how it plays out. I mean, it is not looking extremely oversold, somewhat on the RSI. See, we're getting, when you look back, when you get to this level, usually it starts trading sideways at least. Where you see my cursor here, we're right about there. We have a ways to go if we really wanted to get oversold on the MACD. But the important date here is maybe Thursday, Friday as well in gold. Okay. I wanted to add, and I think if I wanted to get way ahead, gold looks much stronger when you get into the end of April, sort of like the U.S. April astrology that I was talking about earlier. Okay, so what do we got here? We're looking at silver. Silver got creamed, and it's currently trading close to multi-year lows. If I expanded this to a weekly or a monthly chart, these are close to being 10-year lows, and we bounced off that low right there, and we've almost come up to sort of minor trend line. But this was a major support level, which we blew through. And what's happening here? Again, look what's going on. On March 20th, this Friday, and in silver's case, it's a Thursday, Friday. We have two things that, are worth really paying attention to. And then in addition, out here on March 26th, which is, let's see, I think it's a Thursday, a very strong reversal date out here on March 26th. So, I see us, regaining some ground here as the month goes on. At least that's the astrology somewhat points to that. Okay, another pretty ugly chart. Bitcoin. People needed to raise cash. And maybe it was just out of being super conservative, wanting to go to a more safe haven form of currency, like the U.S. dollar or gold, or they had margin calls. Who knows what was going on? But we were in a situation this week where people needed to raise cash, and so let's look at what's happening in Bitcoin. So it is very oversold. We've come down to a support level, had a nice bounce into, I think this was Friday, the green bar. And what's happening coming up? So on March 17th, I'm looking at the symbols. To me, it's not extraordinarily bullish. And I really don't see a lot of super bullish things happening in Bitcoin, which is kind of drives the whole crypto market until you get out here to April 2nd, and then you get some reversal energy. And when you get into April 10th, which is not on this chart, again we get into something more bullish. So my inclination, looking at the astrology combined with the technicals with Bitcoin, is that this was the hardest hit market, and maybe the last one of what could be a safe haven play will be the last one to bounce back relative to gold and silver. Okay, U.S. dollar. Okay, U.S. dollar a week ago was trading way down here. It had a gigantic reversal. Now it's blown through all these resistance levels. People have rushed into cash. This chart is of the ETF UUP, which is representative of what's gone on in the dollar. And so now it's at multi-year highs. And it's just that people have freaked out, and they've gone into the dollar. Well, let's look at the dollar astrology. It has one of the strongest reversal volatility symbols in astrology relative to markets happening on the 18th. For some reason it says March 12th there. Maybe it got accidentally moved. But on the 18th, disregard this. On the 18th, 17th, and 18th, we should see a very large reversal, or at the minimum, a lot more volatility going on in the dollar. So I'm leaning in the direction that this huge run-up is temporary, okay? So we'll see what happens to the Fed. I mean, it could just be a reversal coming about because of the Fed, coming up with a huge number for a stimulus package, okay? Okay, finally, I'm just going to bring in, and this was kind of my supply and demand reference at the beginning of the video, because, we've seen this huge demand for U.S. dollars, and we just saw that in the chart we just looked at. Well, eventually, people, if this is a huge stimulus package and a lot of money is being created out of nowhere to keep the stock markets up, to keep businesses afloat, that money is going to affect, it's a huge increase in the supply of currency, of US dollars, and that will affect the value as time goes on. That will affect the value of US dollars, supply and demand. And this article just came out the other day. It was written by a gold dealer, Bullion Star, which I think is worldwide, but they're mostly talking about their outlet or their branch in Singapore, and how much they have increased sales just recently, and that there are shortages clearly coming up. Now, right now, I know the U.S. Mint has run out of silver 1 ounce coins, and I know that dealers in my area are no longer selling either gold or silver because they're waiting for deliveries to come in. But people are looking ahead, and they're seeing that having some gold and silver would be a smart investment right now, given the uncertainties that we have. So things are the reports are coming in that the supply issue with gold and silver is becoming an issue, and so look for that happening. And if you have any inclination of shifting some of your some of your savings, I'm not going to put a percentage on it, but shifting some of it into precious metals, then do some research right about now. Okay, that's it for today. Again, my name is Stephen. I've been studying astrology for 40 years. I have a master's degree in psychology. I am also an artist, and have been a precious metals crypto advocate for some time. I also do consulting with astrology and finance, consulting with personal transits in astrology. You could reach me at astroindicator@gmail.com if you're interested, and I accept Bitcoin donations. But I usually do these every 2 weeks, so if you're interested in being notified, consider subscribing and hitting the like button and all that business. But, best wishes, stay safe, and let's hope that things are not as bad as they may appear right now. Thanks for listening.